Here's a good one. You ready for this? The Last of Us director Neil Druckmann has said in an interview he doesn't think that he has many more big games left in him. Oh, this is really too bad. Anyway, moving on. Let's continue with real news. Okay. No, I'll actually comment on this for real. All right. Basically in the interview, here's what he says. So, when they were making games like Uncharted 1 and 2, okay? And what's hilarious is in the interview, as they're interviewing this guy, the way he's talking is like he was the one doing it all, right? Like, oh, yeah, back with those games, it was a party atmosphere. Everything was laid back. We'd have late nights where, especially like the multiplayer of Uncharted 2, we would just sit around the office playing this game to the wee hours of the morning, enjoying it, tweaking it a little bit, and all of this, right? And it's like, what's hilarious about that story is he wasn't, really fully in charge of any of those games he's describing that he claims were the better games. He shared responsibility with many other people who no longer work for the company. He forced them out because his attitude basically was that he was going in a certain direction with these games, and these people wanted to go in another, and he basically was like, well, it's my way or the highway. They said, well, then we're leaving. We're not putting up with you. You're like a giant ego. You're an egomaniac. We want nothing to do with you. Good luck, and we're going to go do our own stuff. And so I believe there were two people who were also in charge of those games, Uncharted 1 and 2, that is, who left after that and kind of left. The real story was Uncharted 4 was a completely different game, and then got retooled under Druckmann's watch to be what it ended up being, which, by the way, was a great game, but that basically the studio then, when those people left, completely turned direction. And that's why you've got The Last of Us 1. That's a completely somber, serious tone, talking about really interesting plot lines, like what's it like in a post-apocalyptic situation where people are dying left and right from these cordyceps. What are the human relationships like in that situation, right? Take a look at the relationship between Joel and Ellie in that game and all of that, and it's all about survival and emotion. And then Last of Us 2 just becomes a very generic piece of revenge, angst, very teen angsty fucking game where everyone's a dumbass, people acting out of character from the first game. Basically, you could tell someone else wrote Last of Us 2 versus Last of Us 1. Yeah, it was Neil Druckmann. He wrote Part 2, and the plot of Part 2, in my opinion, was atrociously fucking bad. Not even close to how good Last of Us 1 was. Because he wrote the whole fucking thing, and the people who wrote the good parts of Last of Us 1 aren't worth the company anymore. They moved on, right? So, basically, he says in this interview, when we were making the old games, it was like a party atmosphere. But basically, once we started making games that were expected to be giant blockbusters for Sony, it sucked all the fun out of it. And he even says, recently when I've been working on other projects, like The Last of Us TV show, or there was something else that he recently did too, and I can't even remember what it was. But basically, it's like, that stuff was so much more fun and interesting to me than making these games. So I think that basically, like, Last of Us 3 is probably the last one for him. To which I say, good. Please. As soon as you can. I wish you the best. Get the fuck out. Let people who have passion for games make them, who don't have agendas. Let people who are actually going to make meaningful games again. The games you have made since you took over the studio have been dog shit. No, really. They've been way worse than the games that came before. You ran The Last of Us into the ground. You made a TV series about a post-apocalypse that doesn't have zombies in it besides one episode. You're terrible. And there is a group of people who like what he does because of the way he goes about his stuff with his leftist agendas. So if you like that content, follow the guy as he moves on from games. But please just get the fuck out of games. Because I keep saying this, we don't need politics in our video games. The whole point of a video game is that we're supposed to be able to escape all of the drama of our real lives, right? And have a good time together, enjoying a fantasy. I don't need to play a fantasy and say, oh, well, now it's all about politics. This group and that group and this representation and this spin on this and this is misogynist and this is this and this is... Fuck you off, man. I hear it all day. All day, every day, everywhere you go on the internet, on social media, everywhere you go in politics, you hear this constantly. I don't need to boot up my video game and hear the same shit from you because you can't fucking grow the fuck up and keep your shit out of your games. In fact, Last of Us 2 sold as well as it did because of it. If Last of Us 2 did not have those themes, it wouldn't have been Game of the Year. Sorry, that's just true. I don't care what anyone else says. That's the truth of it. The game was great on its own merits, but it was really that whole agenda that he had. Remember, if you buy Last of Us 2, a vote for Last of Us 2 for the Game Awards, that sticks it to the haters. That really gets those bigots, so do it. I don't want that in games. I want games to sell and be popular, all right, because they're good. Not because of a fucking feel-good movement from some political agenda that the guy can't sell his games otherwise, right? And if you don't believe me and you think I'm making it up, he publicly apologized for it. Take a look at the end of that year during the Game Awards when he was campaigning on social media for people to vote for the game to make it Game of the Year, and then he had to retract his statements and apologize for it because he realized how immoral it was when people called him out for it. So that's what I mean, like, I hate this guy. I'm sorry. He doesn't belong in game development. He's ruining game development and turning it political. I don't need politics in my fucking video games. What's sad about it is, Last of Us 2 was pretty much the most accessible video game of all time, right? It did a lot of things good. You might say, well, that's great for games. You're correct. However, because he made his game so political, how many people actually talk about that? Right? After Last of Us 2 released, what was the next thing that Neil Druckmann did? Re-release Last of Us 1 for full price. What was the next thing that he did? Re-release Last of Us 2. What was the next thing that he did? Well, he made the television series. What was the next thing that he did? Well, I'm going to make a full-fledged multiplayer game out of factions. Then he canceled it. What has he actually done? Nothing. He's sitting on his pile of political laurels, acting like because Last of Us 2 was made Game of the Year, that he's like God's gift to gaming. He's not. In fact, it's hilarious because in the interview, he says, man, I really liked the directing a lot. Like, he's basically saying he wants to be a director. Hollywood does not want Neil Druckmann at all. All right? After he did his Last of Us season, and of course, the critics said it was great because guess what? The critics are all leftist liberals and they love this guy. Well, he tried to go and the rounds. He went to all these events. What was it? I can't remember if it was like the Golden Globes or whatever. But he goes to this event and he's thinking, I'm going to be the talk of the town. People are going to see me as the guy who transitions video games from games into theater or television or movies. Like, I'll be the guy. I'll be the transitioner. No one talked to this fucking guy. They all were like, who is this fucking guy? They don't know who he is. He looks like he's full of, he's posing for the cameras. No one wants a picture. No one interviewed him. No one cared. No one cares about Neil Druckmann except Neil Druckmann and his cult. That's it. I just find it hilarious, right? That this guy is so full of himself. You know, I just can't take game development. It's too hard now. It's not fun. I just want to direct. No one wants you to direct. In fact, I'll even say this. Do you know who everyone would love to direct something? Hideo Kojima. That's who people want to see make shows. That's who people want to see make movies. Because the guy's games basically are shows and movies. And they're some of the most unique things you've ever seen. I would love to watch a Hideo Kojima television show or movie. I don't want to see Neil Druckmann do anymore. He sucks. So there you go. All right, I'm done. I'm not going to rant anymore about this fucking jackass. He already wasted enough of my time.